So Caroline, thanks for doing this. You're one of the stars of cult cinema. You've worked with some of the biggest horror stars of the age. You survived the Golden Voyage of Sinbad, kicked ass in StarCrash, and you tried and failed to kill James Bond. So thank you for doing this with us.
What a lovely introduction. Thank you very much.
You can pay me later.
Yeah, yes.
So, I mean, you do so many conventions all around the world. What do people come up to you and want to talk to you about the most?
Well, various things. Hasn't he done an amazing job, by the way, this man today? If you listen to some of the panels, wow. I sometimes it's kind of hard to keep up with, but he's just extraordinary, and he knows so much. He's a man that knows so much. It's astounding. But
all of this is just fulfilling, my childhood dreams. Just talking to a Bond girl.
A very vintage elderly lady. But hey. I'm always amazed when. Hello there. I'm always amazed actually when people do come up, and if they come up to me and they've seen the film and they look the films and they look so young, and I say, well, when did you see it? And it's either their grandfather showed it to them, or they saw it in the 80s, or various things, and it still astounds me when people do know my work. It's a funny old thing, that really. It's a funny old business, but I've been very fortunate and very lucky.
Well, I mean, you started off in modelling. You won the Face of the Year competition, and then you were on the cover of Vogue. But how did you end up getting into acting?
It was kind of by the by, really. I had no plans to act at all. I wanted to do art. That was about. I'm very, very dyslexic. If some of you noticed, if you've come up to see me, I have to write it down to get my spelling right. So it's always been a struggle for me. So I wasn't really. I was not too bad at art, but everything else I couldn't do. I could do a bit of French, but that was it. So I was kind of called a bit slow at school. And I wasn't slow. I could recite poetry and I could remember things if they were read to me. But that's such a stigma to live up to. So really, I started by doing some. I went to art school to Brighton for Saturdays mornings, and then an art student friend said, could he take some photographs? And I said, well, yes, that's fine.
Art students, they're all the same.
Oh, he was very sweet. He was actually a mature student. I was all of the age of 16 and a half. And he was a lot older, but he was studying photography. And he was extremely nice and kind of, I suppose, in a way, instrumental in my little travelling path. And he took the photos, asked my mum if he could send them to David Bailey, who was the photographer of the day. He was like the big cheese. He was the one. And he was having a competition in a newspaper, and my mum said, yes, that's fine, not thinking anything more about it. And then we heard back, and by the by, the photograph and my little mush had won the competition, which was quite strange. So that was my first foray into modelling, and I worked a lot. I worked quite a lot. I was lucky. I was with a good agency. And then from there I started doing little extra parts in Casino Royale, the original, the spoof.
David Niven and Peter Sellers, yeah.
Yes, Peter Sellers and Woody Allen. And I'd ask our director, who was Val Guest, I'd say, can I just sit on the side and watch them work? He thought I was a funny little thing. He said, well, when you want to go and have fun with the other girls. I said, no, can I just sit here and watch? I'll be very quiet. So he let me sit on the set, and I watched and enjoyed and felt very inspired by all these extraordinary actors. So.
And then you became the face of Lambs Navy Rum, which up until then was advertised by essentially men in sailors' uniforms. And then it became you in a wetsuit.
Yeah.
And sales skyrocketed, and you blew Captain Morgan's rum out of the water. When you get a gig like that, do you get Lambs Navy Rum sent to you for the rest of your life?
No, I was going to say I wish, but I'm not really a drinker.
Are you not?
I have had a drop of Lambs Navy Rum, and it's actually quite nice. It's actually nice in hot milk, or my granny used to make trifle. It's lovely. Oh my goodness!
I was about to say, if you haven't had any for a while.
Oh, you're not enticing me, are you? Oh no! That's a big bottle. Where's the wetsuit? Believe me.
Well, we've got some glasses.
Not nowadays. Oh, no. Golly, that's amazing. It's like a rabbit out of a piano or something. Yeah. Wow. That's great.
Well,
yes.
if you want a drink,
my old friend. No,
go.
I think no. I think no. I do get a little bit tiddly if I have half a glass of wine. I'm not a very good drinker. But I did the Lambs Navy Rum. I dabbled a bit in films before. I had done a Western with Richard Widmark called The Talent for Loving, and I worked with Cesar Romero Widmark in Spain. So it was an American. I played a Mexican American in the film. So, but this was sort of a start of stuff for me. The Lambs Navy. I went on to do it with no contract for 12 years. They just used to phone me up, and they said, "Do you want to do another one?" I said, "Really?" They said, "Yeah, we'd like you to do another one." And as the years grew on, the costumes and the wetsuits got smaller.
Shocking.
Yeah, shocking. I know my father, the first time he saw the advert, he's a solicitor in London, in the city, was a solicitor. And I remember he came out of Waterloo Station, apparently he told me, he came up the escalator to be confronted by a half-naked, I mean it wasn't really, but it was quite strong for the time, with a jumpsuit and a wetsuit and wet hair and a knife strapped to my thigh. And he said, "Oh, Caroline," he said, "I didn't know where to look." I said, "What do you mean, Daddy?" He said, "Well, it's quite it's quite strong." I said, "Yeah, but it's okay." So it kind of was okay, and he was fine with it after that. He was very fine. My dad was not a prude or anything, so.
Well,
no.
these ads got you noticed by horror producers, especially those from Hammer, and you went on to work with some of the biggest names in horror: Christopher Lee, Vincent Price, Donald Pleasant. Can you tell us about your experience making all those films, like Abdominal Dr. Phoebes?
Oh, golly. Wasn't I lucky when I think about it, with all the people I've worked with? I mean, can you hear me back there? Am I all right? You can.
Are you okay?
Good, fab. Okay, as long as you can. So I was incredibly lucky, and I don't remember which order I did them, but it was Sir James Carreras who'd seen the Lambs adverts. Again, it was quite a strong image, and they were actually rather nice photographs. And he travelled up and back to Brighton, and he'd seen the posters, big old posters, big old billboards, and he said, apparently he said to Jimmy Liggett, who was his second in command at Hammer, he said, "Could you bring her in? Could you find her and bring her in?" So by a series of events, I got found and brought into the office. It sounds like a lamb to the slaughter, doesn't it? But it so wasn't. They were so charming and so sweet. And they said, we'd like to offer you, first of all, a screen test, which was fine. So I did the screen test with, he was a wonderful director called Peter Collinson.
Okay.
Who did, he worked with my friend actually, with Martine Beswick. He did, I think it was called Penthouse or something.
Martine Beswick, who was in Thunderball.
Yes, Thunderball, yes, and Dr. Jekyll and Sister Hyde. Yeah, my lovely friend. So he offered me, he quite liked what he saw, so I was offered a contract for Hammer for a year. And I'd seen Hammer films before. I'd seen some of the stuff they had done, and I thought it was beautifully shot, extremely well directed, and you had some great actors and actresses there. So I felt quite excited really by the contract. So did my agent. I mean, the thing is, in those days, you kind of got very little money. I mean, it was not what people thought, but it was just the idea of working with Hammer that he was, delighted about.
Well, I read you were the only actress to ever receive a contract from Hammer Studios. Is that true?
Apparently it was. There was myself and Shane Bryant. No, Shane, who was in Captain Cronus.
Oh, Captain Cronus.
Yeah.
Carla the Gypsy.
Carla the Gypsy.
Which I've read is the character that you most identify with. Is that true?
I like that character. I liked it also because I just had one outfit throughout, and I'd go into the makeup and hair, and the makeup man would say, "Have you washed your hair? When did you last wash it?" I said, "Well, I haven't washed it for a few days." He said, "Don't wash it for 10 days. He said, "We need it like that." I said, "Okay." So it was great, and then they put a little bit of mud on my face and it was fine. So 15 minutes in makeup and it was tops. It was sometimes you're in makeup for, depending on what you got to be or, your character.
And then they're throwing eggs and tomatoes at you.
They did throw eggs and tomatoes. That was actually, I think that was one of my first scenes.
Oh, right, okay.
I did, because they kind of liked Brian Clements, who was the wonderful director and writer of so much. He thought with this film, he wanted to try and do it in sequence, which in film doesn't happen. You're always shooting in summer, which is meant to be a winter scene, and vice versa. So you sometimes work with quite adverse conditions. So we pretty much shot that first opening scene, and he said, well, we need it to kind of look a bit realistic. You've been dancing on a Sunday. You're a naughty girl. So we'll put you in the stocks. And then, unbeknownst to me, he said, Caroline, we're going to do something, and are you all right with this? I said, well, it depends what it is. So he said, we've got the crew here, a couple of the crew, and we've got eggs that we want to throw at you, and the hairdresser then came in, and she said, it's very good for the hair, Caroline. It's a really good hair conditioner. So basically I agreed to it, and they just had eyes closed, and if anybody's seen the film, that is all the eggs and tomatoes that they threw.
Oh my God. So you were doing your own stunts?
Oh, I did my own stunts. Hey, and getting on the back of that truck, on the back of the cart, and it was going along, the horse was running along, and they said, we can't do many takes, we've just got the one camera. So I'm really rushing along, I'm barefooted outside, and there's all sorts of stuff on the ground, and I'm running along. I eventually get up, but after the second time, I get into the wagon,
and then I ride off. Your own stunts, I heard that during At the Earth's Core, with the Mahars, reptilian monsters, and that you actually got cold cocked by one of the stuntmen swinging down.
Well, he was. I don't know again if anybody's seen the film, but it was a lovely, sweet family film actually. And instead of the wonderful creatures that Ray Harryhausen had, these were men in suits. And they were stunt men in suits, so they were big men, big strong men, and the suits were mighty heavy. So they were wearing these things. I mean, they were made of, some of them were made of fiberglass to give the appearance of ribs and for the creatures. And they had kind of these heavy duty, I don't know what you call it, not plastic, but whatever the word is. We need some special effect people here, but
it's a big fiberglass.
A big kind of fiberglass wings, but they did have to work a bit, had to flap. Anyway, we were doing a scene. There was Peter Cushing and myself, and we were in this circle of fire, and we were meant to be mesmerized. And there was wonderful Peter doing his wonderful best, and he was in a trance. We were both mesmerized and in a trance, and I was walking towards the fire because I was mesmerized by the Mahars with the eyes, and Peter was kind of standing there. If you look at him, he's completely standing there like that. He had a duck umbrella for a prop, but that's kind of it. And then they were these men, and I suppose they were higher than the stairs, maybe double the height of those stairs, and they were going to come down on Kirby wires strapped to their backs, and they were going to come and attack us. So, okay, they did a dry run, and that was fine, and Peter and I were standing in the middle of the fire circle. And then when it was Kevin Connor, the director, shouted, action, then they said, right, get ready, Caroline. Remember, you're mesmerized. So I said, right, I'm mesmerized. Okay. Peter was mesmerized. And suddenly, kind of from the corner of my eye, I saw this man, this stunt man in the Mahar suit. And I could see, I thought, oh my goodness, he's heading straight for us. And he actually looked out of control because his things were flapping, and I thought, oh my gosh. So, in fact, he was meant to kind of swing round us. The Kirby wire was meant to take him round us and then circle us. But in fact, one of his wings was obviously stuck in a position because he couldn't flap it. And we were there, and it just tipped my head. So I kind of I don't know what happened to me, but I think I saw stars really and then Peter, within his character kind of came to, and he kind of grabbed me within his character, not forgetting but he kind of grabbed and he sort of held me, and he could see what had happened. So I think if you look at that film, you'll see. So I was, I do my own stunts, and we did with Doug McClure too.
Oh, Doug McClure, yeah.
With the fiery beastie. Those were our own stunts, because they said, again, this is at the Earth's core, they said, do you want, we've got a man and a woman stunt people, and Doug and I looked at each other and we said, no, we don't need stunt people, we'll do it. So, little fool us. So we rehearsed it, and Peter was there, and he was going to shoot his bow and arrow at us, and it has to be, Peter was meant to hit a fiery beastie. The fiery beastie was meant to fall into the ravine, and Doug's character, David, comes to rescue me. So we blocked it all, that was fine. They didn't actually shoot the beastie. They said, well, actually do the beastie on camera. So the beastie is breathing fire, right? We said, that's fine, breathing fire, fine. So we did it, and we started the scene. And then, Peter was ready, Doug and I had a little bit of dialogue. And then suddenly, there was this extreme heat. And I think my hair flew up on end, as did Doug's, because the fiery beastie was so close. And you could actually feel the fire. And I don't know if my hair singed or, I could absolutely feel the heat. So the screams and the things that you see from Doug and I are totally real. It was so close. So I could see why the stunt people, but we did our own.
Another thing I wanted to ask you about was in the 70s, obviously this is HorrorCon, there were so many films, and nudity was a big part of them.
Yeah.
However, I read that you turned down a lot of roles in films like Dr. Jekyll and Sister Hyde and Frankenstein the Monster of Hell because you didn't want to do any nude scenes, despite the fact that it was a big part of the genre at the time. Can you tell us about your decision in making that?
Yeah, it was a decision on my part. And if anybody's seen Dr. Jekyll and Sister Hyde, my lovely Martine is so magnificent and so naughty, but so great in that. She's fantastic. She was made for that role. So. And in fact, it was very gentle, the scenes that she did, but it's just something I didn't want to do, because for me it kind of, film is all about magic to me, magic and mystery, and I think, I don't know, for me, looking back it might be a different thing now, but at the time I just felt, well, I just want to keep something of me, for me. We got pretty close in Captain Cronus, but I was not naked. That I had these, I had the lighting, Charlie bars and things, which are very clever lighting, and I had my long hair, was all stuck, and nude underwear. So I felt actually fine in that. But yeah, it was very much a requirement of the 70s.
Yeah.
Every actress was pretty much, you'd think, oh, is it going to be written in the contract? Have we got to take our clothes off? And pretty much it was kind of par for course. But it's just something I didn't deem necessary. It's more I don't know. Keep something yourself. It's more mystery. Hey, you see it. We've all more or less got the same body parts. I mean, men aside, but you know what I mean. More or less, don't we? So hey,
Well, speaking of mystery, one of the big films of my childhood was The Golden Voyage of Sinbad.
Oh, a lovely film.
And it was written by Brian Clemens, who directed you, of course, in Captain Cronus, and it was filmed in New York. Can you tell us about making that? Because you've got Ray Harryhausen's amazing stop-motion monsters, you've got Tom Baker in Unfortunate Brownface. Again, 70s.
Yeah, it was 70s.
Yeah, tell us about making that film, because that's a great film.
It was a beautiful film to be involved with. It was. I remember speaking to Ray about his, his memories. We actually did a thing together shortly before he died. We watched the film together and we talked about it. And the Ray and Diana's foundation has that piece of footage. But he said for him it was like a fairy tale. It was like making a fairy tale with magic creatures and mythical, and just, it was a beautiful film to make. It was hard work. I mean, any filming, it's like any job. It's a job, the hours are long and you know, hard work. But he made it very special and very magical. And we had Gordon Hessler for the dialogue scenes, who actually did the dialogue scenes. But then when we did the special effects scenes, the creature effects scenes, it was Ray who came in and directed the scenes. So he was a wonderful, if anybody's seen his artwork, he was a fantastic illustrator, but beautiful, intricate designs that he did. If you look at his books, they're amazing. And so what he'd do, before, he'd show us his storyboard. So his storyboards would always be of his creatures. So you kind of got a really good idea of what the creatures would look like. You obviously had no idea how tall and how big they would be, so that was up to us to kind of imagine the enormity. But what he'd do with his stop motion, he'd shoot his actors first, he'd film his actors first, going through the motions of what he'd want to put his creatures on after. Say, for example, you had Kali, the six-armed goddess, in one of the scenes with Tom Baker and John Phillip. And so for that particular scene, they had 3 stuntmen, each with two swords, and they had John Phillip with the one sword. So what they do, this was with Ray, so what they'd do is they'd block it. So Sinbad would be wielding his sword, and he'd have the 3 stuntmen to start off with. And then once John got used to the movements of the sword, you know, they'd rehearse it like a dance. So once he was really blocked into that, they'd take the one stuntman away, and then block it again, and then they'd take the next stuntman away, and then the third one. So by the end, John Phillip was doing all the movements that Ray's creatures required of him. His Kali was going to fight with John Phillip, and that's why it worked so seamlessly, because it had all been blocked. And ditto with the stuff, you know, with me with the centaur, and you know, with John Phillip on the centaur. It was just amazingly done. He was for me, he's the godfather of special effects. And I was lucky enough to be invited to his BAFTA thingy, and with his daughter, with Vanessa, and we went along. And not only on screen, you had Phil Tippett, you had
the dinosaur supervisor on Jurassic Park.
Yes, and you had Rick Baker,
American Werewolf.
You had John Landis, who I was with the other week.
Yeah.
American Werewolf. You had Spielberg saying without Ray Harryhausen there would be no Star Wars. You had James Cameron saying more or less the same thing. You had Joan Dante. You had Tim Burton. And finally, I mean, you had all these Oscar-winning, amazing filmmakers working today that are the best of the best. And then at the end, they showed a little film, a very amateur little film, with a boy and some plasticine. It wasn't Ray, but then onto the stage came Peter Jackson. It was Peter Jackson who was inspired by Ray, and that was, everybody, it was so exciting. He came out and he just loved Ray's work.
He was a lovely man. I actually met him. He came to Bristol, I think it was about 6 years ago.
Golly.
He was towards the later stage of his life, 6 or 8 years ago, and he signed my Jason the Argonauts DVD, and he was such a lovely man. He was a great man, as I think Tom Hanks said at probably that evening event. It's like, some say Citizen Kane's the best film of all time. For me, it's Jason and the Argonauts.
That was a fantastic film. Did you, most of you, see that film? What a brilliant, and today you look at it and it's so seamless. It's just so amazing how they did it. And it's just so clever. And the thing with Ray, he made everything so human, that his creatures would trip like we trip. He kind of put in the human element that so much of the CGI can't do. It can do perfection, which is okay, but to have something that's slightly, quirky and real and with a heart, I think, takes the talents of Ray Harryhausen, and he became so much a friend of mine, and I miss him so much. You know, he's just, and wherever I go in the world, if I travel a bit or a lot, in Germany they showed Sinbad. That was a month or so ago, and John Landis was there, so they showed Sinbad. And I've just come back from Atlanta, Georgia. They showed Sinbad, so it's just he's just legendary and just a wonderful and very modest man. So yes, I enjoyed that film. It was amazing.
I guess the role that you're probably best known for is Naomi Stromberg's villainous henchwoman in The Spy Who Loved Me, where you tried to kill the finest man to wear a safari suit, Sir Roger Moore.
I love that.
What was it like working on the Bond franchise, which is probably the biggest franchise of all time?
It is a big franchise, isn't it? It's still going. Thanks to when I worked on it, it was Cubby Broccoli. But now you have Barbara Broccoli, who is so much taken up his mantle and his banner, and he's doing it proud. I mean, what a great choice of Bond. I mean, I think everybody at the time, they were so mean to Daniel Craig. They said, oh no, he's too short, he's too blonde, he's too ugly, he's too this. He's a fantastic Bond.
He's great.
He is so much Ian Fleming's character come to life. He's also very human, you know, makes him quite human, and he's just brilliant. So,
however, you never catch him wearing a automatic crocodile submersible like Sir Roger did.
You actually know Sir Roger did it with such style. And the big collars and the big ties and the
bell-bottom trousers
and the bell-bottom hair.
That man's outfits.
We were the 70s, and we was No, he was so. Roger was, oh my goodness, I loved working with him, and when I get to see him, which I do from time to time, we did a television last year together, the one show, and he's just so funny. Has anybody met him? Have they? You met everybody.
Well, I was at an audience with Sir Roger Moore at Bath last year, so I was in the crowd.
But you were in the crowd, but isn't he? He's so quick. I mean, he's so, because he's getting on he had his birthday.
He's 89.
Yeah. Ish. No, before, younger.
70s,
Yeah.
65.
Way younger. Say yes.
50.
Well, a little bit older than that. But no, he's just a real gentleman and twinkly and kind of cheeky and does one-liners, and he still does it. He's very off the cuff, and I like that. You know, he's there's no pretense about Roger. He's what you see is what you get. And what you get is pretty damn good. You know, he's just lovely. He was my Bond.
I think he's everyone's Bond to some degree. Everyone kind of grew up with Sir
They've got
Roger.
a soft spot. And look at all the stuff, the Persuaders and the... Gosh, I go back to Ivanhoe. None of you were born, were you? Does anybody remember Ivanhoe? Do you remember? Yes. You learned about... Oh, that's so sweet. You weren't a twinkle, I know.
Did you always go up for the role of Naomi, or was there a chance you could have been Agent XXX? Or did you always go for the villain?
No, I just got the call. I think XXX was definitely taken. I had no thoughts on Bond at all, but my agent said, oh, you've had a call from Cubby Broccoli. I said, oh, good, that's great. So I went up, and he'd seen some of my work, and he thought it was okay. Again, the Lambs Navy came into play. He'd seen the image, and she was quite a strong image, the character I played in the poster, or was in the poster.
It's almost like Honey Rider from Doctor No
with the knife
and
and the hair and all the wet stuff. So yeah, he actually more or less said, well, you've got the role if you want it. Do you think you want it? I said, it sounds rather good. I like the idea of working with Roger. He said, well, go away and think about it. So I went away, spoke to my agent. I'd actually been offered the role of Ursa in Superman at the same time. And he said, well, we've got a bit of, my agent said, this is a bit of a dilemma. I said, why? He said, well, because you have to choose which one. I said, well, what do you think? And he said, well, I think as Bond is, we know about Bond. Bond is tried and true, and I would do the Bond. I said, well, I'll go with the Bond. And also, when you see Superman, Sarah Douglas is so Ursa.
She's great.
I tell you what, I couldn't have done that. No, I would have done it differently, but I couldn't have done that. She's fantastic in that.
Well, they were shooting Superman 1 and 2 back to back, so
Yes.
the first one hadn't been released, so you had no idea at that point.
No,
it would be so
this is
big,
what
and
he
Christopher
thought,
Reeve
yes.
would be so amazing.
But I loved Naomi. She was kind of, she was fun. I got it, and there wasn't a lot in the script, so I thought, well, I'll just make her my own and just have fun with her. And when I met Roger, we just got on, and it was great.
So I actually have a confession. I run a cult film club here in Bristol.
Yeah.
And a couple of years ago, I did a screening of a film in Bristol Planetarium, and it sold out in 4 days, and it was StarCrash.
Golly, I wonder why.
The people came out for StarCrash. So if
That's
any of
so
you are
sweet.
unfamiliar with StarCrash, it came out the year after Star Wars, so 1978. And Caroline is Stella Star, who's an intergalactic mercenary who's hired by Christopher Plummer, who's the Emperor of the Universe, to essentially save the day. And in it is in one of his first film roles as a young David Hasselhoff.
The Hoff.
And it's very much a Star Wars, say, homage slash
kind of a
Italian
take. Yes, yeah.
David Hasselhoff does wave around a lightsaber at some point,
He does.
but it was all shot in Italy.
All shot in Cinecittà in the
So-
studio.
What was that like? I mean, had Star Wars come out, were you aware that this was kind of be riding on the back of
Yes,
Star Wars?
no, I'd seen Star Wars. I'd actually seen it in America when I was there. So, and I suppose about 6 months later, Luigi Cosi or Louis Coates, to give him his American name. He is a really good friend of mine. He's become a really good friend, and I like him a lot. Luigi's wonderful. Yeah, he gave me a call and he said, I'm doing Caroline, I'm doing this film and I think I like you and I like you to work with me. Her name is Stella Star. She is the best space pilot in the universe. A bit like Barbarella, a bit like Star Wars. So I thought, I said, oh, Luigi, can you send me a script? He said, well, we have not got much script. I said, well, just send me what you got and I'll have a look. So he sent me what he had, and then the rest was kind of written on the go. But I liked it, and I really enjoyed him. I just remember, actually, he flew me over beforehand to meet everybody and to have my costume.
There was a costume.
Yes,
Yeah,
of sorts.
yeah.
Well, when I got there, it was the Italian, and he was wonderful. He was very camp and very sweet, and the costume designer. And he said, hello, Carolina. He said, I have your costume here. He said, you like to try on? I said, oh, yes, I'd love that. Yes, that sounds fabulous. I said, where's the spacesuit? Where is it? And then I'll put it on. He said, oh, no. He said, no spacesuit. Stella, no wear spacesuit. Stella, wear this. So he shook this little thing of whatever it was, little plastic thingy. I said, oh, you mean I put that under the spacesuit? He said, well, not really, no. He said, but you wear lovely boots. I said, oh, well, that makes all the difference. He said, you wear long boots. So, hey, my costume was born. So it took me it took me about a week to get used to the costume, with lots of toupee tape and lots of running. I did a lot of running.
Lots of fight scenes,
Lots of
beating up
fighting.
Amazonians. All
Yes,
over
I
the place.
was, and stuntmen and things.
Yeah. I'm name dropping all over the place. I actually managed to interview David Hasselhoff last year. Didn't talk to him about anything relevant to his career. I just asked about StarCrash.
No.
And he said the two of you had great fun making fun of the script because it had clearly been written by
together.
someone who doesn't speak English.
No.
Like there was a phrase where he said, let's go this way, the way is empty.
Yes.
And he said he would remember this.
Yes.
And he said that had the two of you in hysterics.
We laughed, but he said it. He was actually David was wearing the gold mask at that.
Yes.
So he left me to be standing there. He was wearing the gold hooded mask when he said, let's go this way. The way is empty. Yes, and I had to stand there. and be very serious. And yes, I do remember that.
Well, this gives me the opportunity to get answers for all my StarCrash questions.
Okay.
Why is L the robot? Why does he sound like a Texan sheriff?
I suppose they had to westernize the film.
That's true.
Or to Americanize the film. And also my voice is heavily dubbed by, I thought it was Candy Clark, Marjorie Gortner's wife. But I don't know if it was. I've got no idea. Apparently Candy denies doing it, but maybe she would say that, wouldn't she?
And did you think it was going to be a franchise? Were you hoping there were going to be sequels? Or was it always planned as a
there was
one-off?
talk, there was talk about it, because I think it was, what's the chap's name, the big American producer?
Roger Corman.
Roger Corman. I think he took it and he liked it, and there was talk, and we did discuss things. And then you got producers in Menachem and Yoram.
Golan, the men behind
Globus.
Canon Films.
Yes, and therefore they had I think I was nothing really to do with it. I was maybe going to be Stella again. And maybe Donnie and Marie Osmond were in the role of brother and sister, prince and princess, and again Stella was going to ride and save them. And so that was kind of going to be the plan. And they announced it in Cannes. And it was going to be called Star Riders. But they had some sort of an internal disagreement, and Star Riders was never to ride. So, hey, sadly, I mean, we're talking about remakes. It would have to be completely rebooted, wouldn't it, Stella?
Probably at this point, yeah.
Yeah. But it's very sweet to see, and I remember a few years ago, I was invited to the Egyptian theatre in Los Angeles, and they were showing some of my work. And StarCrash was on the agenda, so I introduced it, and and then I sat in the audience, because then I had to go and answer questions. So we started to watch it. My daughters were there, and they were younger at the time. It was 10 years younger, so they were quite young, and they had their popcorn and their Coca-Cola or what have you, and we were watching it, and then there was a woman behind. She started to laugh, and she laughed, and she laughed, and she laughed all the way through this film. I thought, well, that's she obviously hates the film. So then it was time for me to go up, and some people clapped, and various things. They didn't throw popcorn, so that was good. So I went up and started to do my Q&A, and I said, I'm sorry to ask, but I have to ask the lady who was sitting just behind me. I said, you laughed all the way through. She said, yeah, sure I did, honey. She said, Stella Star rocks. So I thought, hey, she liked it, obviously, which is, it's fun. It's harmless, gentle fun.
Any film where Christopher Plummer halts the flow of time
has to be good.
Has to be amazing.
And he does it with such, doesn't
gravitas.
He? Oh, gravitas. Whoa. So watch it for that alone. And watch David Hasselhoff's hair gets bigger than my hair. Our hair and our makeup is so big.
He's got a full-on 70s afro.
He really does. He's got a big old afro, and I've got big old, goodness knows what's going on.
You said you turned down the role of Ursula in Superman 2. I also heard that you turned down the role in Cutthroat Island.
No.
No, is that not true?
No, I didn't.
The internet has lied to me?
No, I didn't, because that would have been amazing.
Yeah.
No,
I was wondering whether it was going to be like an earlier version of it than the one they made in the 90s.
There was an earlier version, but it wasn't called that. It was called Mistress of the Seas, and I was offered it in the 70s, and it was about the pirate, Annie Bonny. So it was a true pirate that did all this. And I think it would have been amazing, and I really wanted to do it. I read the script, and it was a really good pirate film, and a great character, great female character. And they didn't get the money they sadly couldn't get the money. I was unknown. The director, producer wanted me to do it because they felt I was right for it. So it didn't get funded. But later on, obviously in the 90s, Cutthroat Island came to be, and she was great.
She was great. I mean, it was the biggest box office failure of all time when it came out.
It was a husband and wife team, wasn't it?
It was Rennie Harlan and Gina Davis.
Yes,
I think they were married on the set.
Yeah. So, I don't know. Annie Bonny was it was good. It wasn't Hollywoodized, even though it was American written. It was really good story of Annie Bonny. You know, she wasn't a particularly glamorous character. She was, you know, she was one of the boys, and she was really good at fighting. And something I thought I might have been a tad young at the time. You know, maybe early 80s might have given it a bit more oomph, but sadly it wasn't to be. So no, it was a little bit wrong there.
That's a shame. I was thinking maybe we could get some questions from the audience, if anyone has any at this point.
Okay.
You worked with three of the greats, in my opinion: Vincent Price, Christopher Lee, Peter Cushing. Is there any? Who would you say would be your favourite of them?
My favourite, I don't know if you heard the question, that I worked with three greats.
Well, many greats. But
Many greats of the horror genre: Peter Cushing, Christopher Lee, and Vincent Price. And which one was my favourite? They're all my favourites. I can't choose. How do I choose? Did you say that?
Yeah, she said
no. I really, really enjoy them all for different reasons. You know, different reasons. I had a battle to get to do. To be the dead wife of Vincent Price, because I was under contract to Hammer, and they didn't want me to come and do it. And I said, but you know, I want to work with Vincent. I know the people had offered me, the producer Robert Faust had offered me the role of Victoria Fives. Had no dialogue. I realised that she was dead, but to get a chance to watch Vincent work and to be around him on set and see him at work was what I wanted to do. And so Hammer eventually said, well, do you really want to do it? I said, I really want to do it. They said, well, we'll let you out, but you have no credits. And I think they didn't even, I can't remember pay. I think I got my fare, my train fare, or my, you know, down there and stuff, but I didn't get paid. I was uncredited. But I got to work with Vincent Price, and I got to sample his cooking, and that to me was, I shall always remember that. He was wonderful. And Christopher, for me, was my turning point as a young actress. I actually got to know that that's what I wanted to do. When we worked on this few scenes together, I thought, yep, this is what I want to do. I totally I morphed into that character. I became that character when I was working with him. And so I found him very instrumental in helping me do that. You know, I didn't want to see him before he came on with his as Dracula. We'd sat on the set and we chatted, and I sat and did my knitting, and we chatted away about Transylvania and things that you do. And I found him lovely, great voice. I could listen to his voice all day. But for the actual transformation, when he was going to transform into Dracula, we'd shot the build up to that scene maybe the day before with Christopher Neame, Stephanie Beach, and Marsha, Michael Kitchen, and all the fabulous actors I got to work with. We shot the build up, so you were, and Alan Gibson, the director, wanted to shoot it in context. He thought that was important for the build up of the scene, and so that was exciting for me. You know, I hadn't done very much. I hadn't worked with people like this really. I'd kind of just cruised through it before and learnt my lines and, you know, walked from A to B and done it, but not. I can't say I did my best when I was younger, but until that point, I wasn't, as they say now, the trendy thing is, I wasn't in the moment. But with Christopher, I was in the moment. I was there, I believed. So when I saw him come out of into the churchyard, and we'd done the build-up scene, and I know my character, Laura Bellows, which is a very apt name, isn't it? I did a lot of bellowing. But and then she sees him, and he comes towards her. Then that for me was whoa. I thought, okay, you know, that was it for me. So I did the film with him, and then I wanted to study more about acting and then watch more films, sort of glean more about it. So that was a real turning point for me. And Peter was Peter, and I loved him, and I worked with him at the Earth's Core for 6 weeks, and we were on the set every day, and he was just charming and lovely and funny and wonderful. So I've been very lucky. Yeah, really lucky girl.
Great question. Yes, sir.
Great question.
Yeah.
What was it like working with Joe Spinell on Maniac?
Oh, well.
And
And
StarCrash.
what was he like as a person?
What was it like working with Joe Spinell? And I worked on 3 films with him. Firstly, StarCrash, where he introduced himself. I remember.
Zarthan.
Yes,
Yeah.
I remember. I went into the dressing room. We were kind of sharing a big old dressing room in Chinichita. It was a big old, lovely film studio that they did a lot of the Fistful, the Sergio Leone films, so it had great history, the studio. It was a bit drafty in the winter, running around in the Stellar Star, but anyway, so I remember meeting Joe, and I think I was sitting there, getting Stella ready, and then with the makeup, and then he came flouncing in, and he was, I remember, he had practically, they're very heavy on the makeup, the Italians, so he had big red lips and black eyeliner, and his hair was all curled. And he said, I don't know, I can't do Brooklyn. Anyway, he put his hand out. He said, nice to meet you, kid. I said, oh, hello. He said, I'm evil Count Zarthan. I said, oh, I'm Stella Star. So that was our meeting. And from that moment on, I liked him. He lived hard and he certainly played hard, that's for sure. But so we did StarCrash, but I had no dialogue. And then the next time I met him was in New York. I think we were promoting StarCrash. I was there, and it was at a Fangoria convention. And I remember going along, and I knew Joe was going to be there, but I didn't know Bill Lustig, the director, and Andy Garoni, the producer of Maniac, were going to be there. So I went along, and we talked about StarCrash. And then Joe said, and we're doing this new, he said, Caroline, he said, we're doing this new production, it's called Maniac. And he said, our lead actress isn't going to be here, it's Daria Nicolodi, and she can't make it because she's in Italy finishing a film with her husband, Dario Argento. And he said, and he was actually on stage as he said it. He said, Caroline, he said, I think it's something you could do because you kind of look Italian, if you know what I mean. I said, oh, do you think I do? He said, yeah, I think you could play it. He said, it's the role of a photographer, and I've written with Bill Lustig here, I've written this great role for a female, and I think you could do it. And this was live on stage, and I said, oh, Joe, I said, do you really think? He said, yeah, I said, I think you could do it. So he said, read the script. So he handed me the script, and it was I think it was a Saturday night. So I read the script maybe that Saturday night. He said, I have to know an answer. He said, I have to know by Sunday. I said, Sunday? That's tomorrow. He said, yeah. He said, I know, I work quick. He said, I have to know by tomorrow. So I said, okay, Joe, I'll read it and I'll let you know. So I read it, and what was in the script was not entirely what was in the film. I don't know if you've seen it, I know you have. So it's quite a strong film, certainly for the 80s. Anyway, I read the script. I loved Joe, I loved working with him, and I agreed to do it. So I physically slept on the script, and on Monday morning, we did the first scene, which was in the casino, in the clams. We were eating clams and things. Yeah, so it was very ad-libbed. I kind of read it, and Joe was a great ad-libber, and I like that. I like to kind of not know things, and I like a surprise. A surprise is very often more true than if you've over-rehearsed it. And Joe was very much that school of thought. So that was and then after that, a film was written for both of us, which was the last horror film, or The Fanatic. So both of us in mind, and he was extraordinary. I love that fact. I do remember, just one little quick, I'm sure you've got to wind up soon, haven't you?
I'm sure we can do a few more questions. Is there a time limit? Do we have any more time? We're fine.
I just want to finish up this one for you with Joe. We were working in Cannes, doing The Fanatic, or the last horror film. Very, very much guerrilla filmmaking, which we became very accustomed to. It was very much off the cuff. We had a really good script, but very much it was shot during the Cannes Film Festival, which is manic at the best of times. You've got all the actors and all the people watching, and the croisette with the people, you can imagine. And you've got all the starlets, they're all on the beach and they're all naked and all the photographers are there. So it's actually quite manic. So we were going to shoot this film during the Cannes Film Festival, using the backdrop of the Cannes Film Festival, whereby my character, Jana Bates, is meant to be this horror film actress, and Joe's character is this fanatical fan who loves her. Yeah. So he follows her everywhere she goes. So basically it's that. But so we were shooting and we had a lot of scenes together and a lot of scenes. I don't know, it's actually, I think, quite worthwhile seeing, because I think it's a very clever piece of filmmaking when it had a bit of a budget, but not an enormous budget. Cannes looks beautiful, and you've got some really interesting cameos. But I remember one night we'd been filming, we'd done a whole day shoot and a whole night shoot. Actually, it was late in the night, and the local restaurant had agreed to give all the crew, there was quite a few of us, and the actors, dinner. And then suddenly, so we were all sitting down, they made lovely pasta and salads and lovely things, and wine, I think some people, anyway. Suddenly, along the croisette, it was like something from a film, came Joe. He was still in his get-up, which was a white tuxedo. He looked and he had a cloak with a red inside. And he came and he had a big bunch of roses. And suddenly behind him, it's like the Leonardo DiCaprio film where Leonardo's walking along. It's the one with the plane, and he
The Aviator.
No, not that one, where he imagines like a Walter Mitty character, and he walks along, and then you've got Catch Me If You Can. Well done. Catch Me If You Can. That scene with Leonardo with all the girls in the red. Well, there was Joe Spinell walking along the croisette in the white with a cape, with a bunch of red roses, and behind him came the most beautiful looking girls, all clad in bikinis and not a lot else. They were coming along. He said, they've come to have dinner with us. So he picked all these, there was about 15 or maybe 20 beautiful, stunning girls. Where he got them from, I did not ask, I just gave him a look. And he gave me a wink. And then he proceeded to give all the lady crew members red roses. All the girls already had their roses. But that was Joe. He lived hard and he played hard. Played harder, maybe.
Any other questions at all? Yes, sir.
I did the Adam Ant video. No, actually, I did another. That was good fun. Working with Adam was amazing. He'd gone to my agency and sought me out, and he offered me that role as Goody Two-Shoes. I wonder why. Anyway, no, he offered me the role, and I had such fun doing it. Again, he was very loose with his storyboard. We had Mike Mansfield, who'd done all the Top of the Popsy things, and so he was very used to all that style of working. So it was I love the end result of the Adamant. I think it's such fun. We had such fun doing it. But I did another one with Meatloaf, and it was called If You Really Want To, and I played a vampire in that. I got to bite Mr. Loaf's neck.
Oh, I bet he loved it.
That was so cool. I had the big old teeth then, so that was good. Yeah, he was a joy to work with too. So those two, I've just done 2 music videos. I'd love to have done more. I was offered a few more, but those were the 2 I treasure very much.
So there was another question. Yes.
All I just wanted to ask is, the fabulous photographs, the looks that you presented over the years, Caroline, which one do you remember by the most? Which is the one that you go as...
What, film or photograph? Or any of it, because most of them are from films, pictures, the image.
One image.
Golly.
Oh my God.
I don't know really. I don't know. I think if it's say a photograph, the Lambs Navy Rum was pretty good. Film-wise, films from, I don't know. Again, for all different reasons. I love the costumes in Sinbad. I think they were award-winning, and apparently I don't know what happened to the bottom, but the top of the Sinbad, the purpley one, was sold at the prop store, and it all went to charity. It was sold last year, and it raised a lot of money for charity, which I think is so cool. So that was a good photograph. I don't know, I maybe like most unlikely ones that people don't necessarily go for. You know, people tend to like the Dracula pictures were great. It's the photographers too, you know, they see you in different ways and different guises, so, and I could get away from my dyslexic, shy self. You know, that was a way to get away from that. I could become somebody else just for that time, which was very nice.
Well, I think we're going to have to wrap up now. Actually, it's just one more question. Go on.
Hello.
Thank you.
Really like modern filmmaker, producer, actor, actress you really like to work with?
Well, that's a nice question. Any modern actor or actress I'd like to work with. Tilda Swinton wouldn't be shabby. I like that actor, actress. I mean, there's so many out there. I like Carey Mulligan, you know, for the newer ones. There's some great young ones coming up. I tell you what I did see on the plane coming back from Atlanta, and I thought it was so beautiful. It was a bit of a rom-com chick flick, but it was Me Before You. Oh my goodness. I mean, I was, the man beside me was kind of looking at me, you know, all the way on there. It was so beautiful. It was lovely, and that was Emilia Clarke.
Emilia Clarke.
Yeah. Game of Thrones. I just thought she came over so sweetly, and so she was lovely in the film. Very, very real. I like fantasy, obviously, and I like some of the superhero characters. But I also like reality. You know, I like to see a realness in actors. If you can see that, if you can kind of identify, but within their character. But if you can see the essence of the person, you know, I like that. But there's a lot of talented young people out there. And I'm still working, which is I'm grateful for. So, you know, it's lovely.
Caroline, thanks for doing this. Where can people find you online, or what are you doing next that people can look forward to?
Well, we did a spoof with Emma. I don't know if Emma's here, but we did Emma Dark and I and Judy Matheson, along with David Barry, did a spoof called Francula. And it's being shown in Halloween in the Phoenix Theatre somewhere in London, I think.
Great.
So that. Online, I don't know what my online thing is. I don't do computers. I know.
Put her name into Google.
Dude, it's something. I do have a website. It's carolinemunro.org.
.org.
I think. I don't know. John knows. And Jane knows. I don't do computers. What is it? You'll find it. How sweet. You've been a lovely lot. I've had such a brilliant day, and also the organizer. I think Tommy's done fantastic job.
Done a great job.
Will you all be here next year for the next year's one? Yeah, you should be, because I think it's a great show. You're horror fan, of course you will. Yeah, no, it's been. I've had a lovely day. So yeah.
Guys, thanks.
Thank
Please put
you
your hands
very
together for
much.
Caroline Munro.